Good evening, friends. Once again, welcome to each one of you in this 4-day GST refresher course, where today's eminent expert, CA Vishal Raheja ji is there. Vishal ji is just like my younger brother from Hisar. So welcome to you on this platform. And today's topic, thank you. Today's topic is very important, like time of supply and place of supply. Under GST, we can say where the registration and scope of supply yesterday we have seen. Now, time of supply and place of supply is another important topic matter under GST. So it is a very technical topic under GST. We have to learn when the supply will be treated and place of supply will be what place of supply will be treated. So we are going to discuss. I request each one of you to rename yourself so that we can discuss your queries after posting by you in between or in the last. And Vishal ji is there to take up the technical session. I straight away request Vishal bhai to take up your technical session.
Thank you, sir. I am sharing my screen.
Yeah.
Samuchi, is it visible?
Yes, but it is not large.
I have selected screen slideshow mode.
No, but still you can do it again. Sometime it create a problem.
Is it okay now?
No.
Okay.
Stop sharing and again share.
Yes. Is it okay now?
Same as earlier. Go for full screen option. I think कहीं full screen option आता है. F5 से देखिए, I think.
Yes, I have done F5, but अभी भी मुझे तो दिखा रहा है. It's showing me that it is slideshow on full screen.
No, but here is not. It is showing. Chili. Let us start.
Yeah. Anyway, we can start. Content should be clear. In case if there's any difficulty in visibility, I will try to elaborate that point. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I am CA Vishal Raheja, and this is the second day of refresher course of GST. Today we will discuss time of supply and place of supply. Before starting time of supply and place of supply, I request all the participants to please let me know what do you understand by the term time of supply, because all of you must be in practice and you are on day-to-day basis facing these issues. How you interpret the term time of supply? What is your current understanding about time of supply?
Vishalji, can I allow all participants to unmute yourself?
Yes, they can. No issue.
Okay.
They can unmute, and even if they want to type, even in that case, I have no issue. But even if they want to participate by speaking, then it would be a great interactive session.
Okay, sure.
I repeat my question. I was asking, what do you understand by the term time of supply? One reply, it's saying it's issue of invoice date. Sir, I'm not asking what would be the time of supply. I'm asking what is your understanding that by the term time of supply, what it denotes, why people are required to determine time of supply. Yesterday, you guys have learned the requirement of registration, the taxable event which is supply under GST. But what is the new point in discussing time of supply? What is time of supply? I am not asking from you that what would be the time of supply, but why it is important to determine time of supply? Because it is very important to understand if we are discussing some topic, what would be the relevance of this topic? Pooja Jain ji is saying timing of supply will be taxable. At what time supply will be taxable? Okay. Okay, I will start. First of all, we have to understand if a person has taken a registration, he has to apply for the GST registration on the portal. Now the registration has been applied in that particular state from where he is making supply, because supply is the taxable event. Now the question arises, once a person who is engaged, let's suppose, in the business of supplying of goods, he has supplied the goods, he has raised the invoice, he has provided the invoice and delivered the goods. Now on that invoice, he has charged the taxes. Now the question arises, at what time there would be the liability to pay that tax to the government? How government will ensure that if a person has made a supply, then when he will pay, then when he would be liable to pay to me the tax amount which he has charged on the invoice, on the supply he has made? Because under GST, the taxable event is supply. First of all, you have to take registration. Yesterday, you guys have, someone is saying anything? Okay. Yesterday, we have learned there is a requirement of registration once upon crossing the threshold limit, or in some circumstances when there is a mandatory requirement of registration, a person has taken registration. Now he has started his business. उसने अपना business start कर लिया है, but that person must know when he has to pay the taxes. So time of supply tells us what would be the time at which there will be a liability to pay that tax. This provision of time of supply provides us the time limit for paying the liability. However, there are certain methods which have been provided by the government that you have to file the return. In that return, you will pay taxes. Generally, what people understood is if a supply is made in a month, then in that case, in next month, he has to pay the taxes by filing GSTR 3B, and the date of filing of 3B shall be the date of payment of tax. But here lies the difference. The return doesn't provide the time of supply. It doesn't mean that while you are filing the return, you have to pay taxes. First of all, you have to identify that whether in that return which you are filing for the month, whether that supply would be taxable in that return or in the next return. So basically, this is the time of supply, and this is the relevance to understand the provisions of time of supply. Now, our second topic today is place of supply. So what do you guys understand by the term place of supply? Why it is important to understand place of supply? I request, if you guys want to speak, Sumit must have allowed you to unmute yourself. Otherwise, you can write it in the chat box. But why you believe that there is a requirement to determine place of supply? What is the relevance of place of supply? Please tell me. No reply yet. Sumit ji?
Ji Vishali.
Yeah. In the meanwhile, anyone replies, what do you understand by the term place of supply? Why there is a requirement to determine place of supply? Gaurav ji is saying place of supply is required for determining CS or I. Ashwin Thakkar ji is also saying to charge IGST or CGST or SGST. Okay. So basically, the thing is, when we moved into GST regime, the terminology changes from POPS to POS. Earlier, during the service tax regime, the provisions were relating to POPS, place of provision of services. Sir, my screen slideshow has changed or not?
Vishalji, no. Only first slide is there.
There must be some technical issues.
Some technical issue. Please दोबारा करो एक बार तभी possible होगी.
क्या मैं स्टॉप शेयर करके एक बार दोबारा स्टार्ट is it visible now in full screen?
No, I think there is no slide.
Yes, visible.
Okay, great,
Okay,
great,
yes.
great. Hopefully, I believe now it's in the full screen as well.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So basically, we were discussing why there is a requirement to understand place of supply. Everybody knows they can read section 12, section 13, section 10, section 11.
विशाल जी, sorry to interrupt you. I think screen पर आपका desktop दिख रहा है केवल.
But abhi someone has
Ashwin sir confirmed, but I think there is no any slide on the screen.
I request all the participants to please let us know whether you are.
There is no slide. Only desktop is showing, right?
Sir, on my screen it is R.K. Gupta sir's screen is visible, and I believe Mr. R.K. Gupta has shared his screen.
हाँ, अब share कीजिए. I think by mistake he is shared.
Is it okay now?
Your slide is there, but not in full view.
There is some technical
issue is there.
I'm really sorry for inconvenience.
एक बार move कीजिएगा. No problem. Not in full view. Yes, perfect. Vishal ji, perfect. विशाल जी, विशाल जी अनम्यूट है आपका.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, perfect.
Yes. So we were discussing why there is a requirement to determine place of supply. Everybody knows that there are sections from 10 to 13 under IGST Act to determine place of supply. But first of all, we have to understand why a person would be requiring to determine the place of supply. It is true that for determining the right taxes to be charged, but there are certain other things why a person would be needing to understand the place of supply. In the due course, we will cover time of supply, and then we will cover place of supply, and we will understand the importance. Apart from requiring or determining the right taxes, there are certain other points which are also relevant to determining the place of supply. Now let's start with time of supply. The section 12 says we have to determine the taxes to be paid, but we have to understand, we have to determine when there would be a liability to pay would arise. So time of supply provides us that this is the point of time at which a person is required, liable to pay the taxes. So section 12 talks about time of supply in respect to goods, and section 13 talks about with respect to services. First of all, we have divided this chapter this section into three parts. If there is a forward charge, then what would be the provisions? If there is a reverse charge, then what would be the provisions? So the law says basically there would be a different time of supply in case goods are supplied and taxable under forward charge. Everybody must be aware about the forward charge and reverse charge scheme. However, with respect to goods, they are very limited goods which are taxable under reverse charge. But with respect to services, there are a huge number of services, approximately 15 to 16 services which are taxable under RCM. But with respect to goods, the quantity is very low. So now the law says with respect to time of supply, in case of forward charge, I will provide you three basic rules. First of all, see the invoice date. In case the invoice has not been issued within the proper time prescribed. Now, what would be the time? The time has been provided under section 31. सेक्शन 31 हमें बताता है कि इनवॉइस आपको कब तक इशू करना है, बट देयर इज अ पॉसिबिलिटी दैट अ पर्सन has not raised the invoices within the prescribed time. So in that case, it says the last date would be treated as the date in which invoice should be raised. The third point which law provided earlier, it was date of receipt of payment. But here is a important point which we have to understood. It is a query with lots of chartered accountants. They say that in case of goods, if payment has been received, whether there would be a liability to pay tax or not. Let's take an example. I have made a transaction. I place the order for supply of goods and I make the payment in advance. So in a common parlance, the word uses taxability of advances. So my question to all of you, all the participants, is whether there is a liability to pay tax in case advance is received or not. Please tell me whether a person, for example, I have made an advance after placing the order. In that case, whether I would be liable to pay tax on that advance or not. CA Tina Goswami ji is saying yes. Rajni ji is saying in case of services yes. Sumit Nanda ji is saying yes. For goods no. Asha ji is saying for goods no. Rajni ji is saying in case of goods no. Yes, very rightly answered. What happened was, earlier when GST was introduced, the government has planned that whenever a person is making some advances, we want to collect taxes. So by virtue of this provision, what happened was, whenever a person places the order, he has to make a payment. If he has made the payment of that advances, then in that case there would be a liability. But after implementation of GST on the 1st of July, the government figured out that it would be very difficult to provide this provision because everybody believes that GST is a new law. There are lots of confusions. So when the return filing system started in the month of November, government felt that it will create a chaos. बहुत ज्यादा दिक्कत आएगी because maximum registered persons are supplier of goods. तो उनको एक relaxation दिया. What relaxation was? The relaxation was in the form of no liability to pay tax on advances, but only for the goods. The notification number 66 was issued on the 15th of the November, and the government says remove this provision. Which provision? There would be no liability to pay taxes in case a person is in the receipt of advance, but only for the goods, not for the services. So now the situation is, till date, the government has not removed or omitted this notification, not decided this notification. This notification is still in force. Notification number 66/2017. This notification says there would be no liability to pay taxes if advance are received, but with respect to goods. Now my question is, if I am providing bundle of services, in that services I am supplying goods as well as services. In that situation, what will happen if I receive advances? I request all the participants to please participate and answer. My query is, if I am providing multiple products in the form of goods and services, in that situation, how this provision would be impacted, whether I would be required to pay GST on advances received if the bundle supply is consisting of goods and services both. Ashwin is saying service portion, yes. But sir, how will you determine that which portion is for services and if the supply is indivisible? Asha ji is saying on the basis of work order. Okay. Sumit Nanda ji is saying advance is taxable for services. Okay. So I personally believe, however, there is no concrete answer in law for this query. But as far as my understanding is concerned, please share your views as well so that we can discuss this point. I believe in that situation, the concept of composite supply and mixed supply will come into that picture. If it is a composite supply, means the supplies are in the form of bundled supply, and then we have to see what would be the principal supply. On the basis of that, we will determine. We will not bifurcate, we will not divide the contract. We will see the terminology, the meaning defined by the act in the form of composite supply and mixed supply. Through that, we should go. Otherwise, there would be a difficulty to determining on which portion we should pay advances, taxes on that advance, on which portion we are not paying, because it is very difficult proposition for a taxpayer to determine how advance has been paid, whether it is firstly for services or firstly for goods. So it is very difficult. So I am very clear in that aspect that in that situation we should take the help of composite supply and mixed supply. Asha ji is saying if services are dominant then taxable, otherwise not. Yes, that's what I am saying. Sumit Nanda ji is saying if services are dominant then taxable, otherwise not. Yes, you are absolutely right. I agree with your view. In that situation, we can take the help of composite supply and mixed supply. So the rule is very simple now. The date of payment has been deferred by the notification. In case of supply of goods, in case of forward charge, we have to see the invoice date or the date on which invoice has to be issued in case the invoice has not been issued within the time. Section 31 provides us the time. What would be the time limit for raising the invoice? In that situation, we have to see if there is a removal of goods, then it would be treated as the time to generate the invoice. As soon as a person is removing the goods from his premises, he is giving the delivery, he is making the goods available to the recipient. In that situation, that would be the time to generate the invoice. This provision has been provided under section 31 with respect to goods. Yes, Sumiji is saying we should seek the help of. Absolutely right, sir. Yes, moving further. Now, what will be the time of supply in case of reverse charge? In that situation, sir, whether notification 66 will apply in that situation or not, if the goods are taxable under reverse charge. We have discussed notification number 66 has deferred the payment rule. So my query to the participants is, in the case of goods which are taxable under reverse charge mechanism, whether notification 66 would apply or not. Sumit ji, please reply. Asha ji, please reply. What's your view? Ashwin Thakkar ji. Ashwin ji is saying no. Absolutely right, sir. Because That Asha ji is saying, please repeat question. Ma'am, my question is, the notification number 66 has deferred the advances portion, the liability to pay tax on the advances portion by virtue of notification 66. This provision has been deferred and not effective till date. But my query is, in case my goods are taxable under reverse charge and now I have received advances, in that situation, what should be done? Whether there would be a liability to pay tax or not in case advance is received for goods which are taxable under reverse charge. Ashwin ji has already answered that there is no need. Sumit ji is saying no, Asha ji is saying no, Sanjay Bhardwaj is saying no. Absolutely right. The reason is the notification number 66 has only deferred that section 12(2) with respect to supplies which provides us the time of supply in case of forward charge. So in case of reverse charge, that provision has not been deferred. If the payment has been made, then in that situation, we have to pay, we have to show it in our return, and we have to pay the taxes. Now, a very, very important and debatable issue, hot topic of these days, supply of vouchers. Please tell me, what are vouchers? Section 12(4) provides the time of supply in case of supply of vouchers. To understand that, what would be the provision? First of all, we must be aware what are vouchers. Kunalji is saying gift vouchers. So basically what happens was, after the introduction of e-commerce era into India, there is the new term introduced. The term is vouchers. By virtue of vouchers, what you can do is, voucher is the basically payment instrument. The law has defined vouchers. It said by voucher you can pay for any supply, whether it is of goods or services. Irrespective of paying in the form of money, you can pay that voucher. Now the question arises, why we need to determine time of supply for supply of vouchers? Whether vouchers are goods or whether vouchers are service. It is the basic debatable issue which industry is facing, how taxability of voucher would arise. So basically the controversy is the persons, the assessees who are dealing in vouchers, they said vouchers are nothing but a form of money. They are prepaid payment instruments, PPI. So if voucher is money and money is out from the definition of goods, why government is levying taxes on supply of vouchers? Are you getting my point? What I am trying to convey? What is the exact controversy relating to vouchers? If you guys want to speak, you can also unmute yourself and speak in case you are not comfortable in writing, so that we can make it more interactive. I repeat my question again. The persons, the assessees who are dealing into vouchers, they are saying that vouchers are PPI, prepaid payment instruments. They are similar to money. They are similar to ATM card. They are similar to cash credit card. A person is making payment through vouchers, then why you are levying taxes on the vouchers? Why you are levying taxes on gift vouchers? They are similar to PPI or money. But in that situation, however, till date, no concrete resolution has been provided by the GST Council with respect to taxability of vouchers, but there are several rulings. The famous ruling is by AAR of Karnataka in case of premier goods. The advanced advanced ruling authority says, if a person is using that voucher for the redemption, in that situation it is a PPI. In that situation it is a prepaid payment instrument. but we have to basically draw a dividing line. If a person is selling vouchers to another person, in that situation there is a trading of vouchers. In that situation the person is not doing the redemption of that voucher. So if a person is supplying vouchers, in that case it would be treated as goods, and in that situation that supply of voucher would be taxable. They have taken the help of section 12(4) while coming to the conclusion which I have mentioned, and they are saying that in case the supply has been made by the supplier of the vouchers, then in that situation, if the person has a concrete knowledge that this voucher would be redeemed for this much amount of goods or this much amount of money, in that situation that would be the time of supply. So basically what they are trying to say is that they are differentiating the vouchers into two parts. The first part is, if I am aware that this voucher will be redeemed only for purchasing mobile phone, then in that case, the time of supply should be the time of issue of voucher. But in case the supply is not identifiable at that time, I am not aware that this voucher will be utilized by me for purchasing a mobile phone or purchasing a laptop or purchasing a TV. In that situation, the date of redemption of voucher should be the time of supply. So why I am discussing this point is, now we are analyzing what would be the time of supply. In case I am dealing into vouchers which are at this point of time are not identifiable, that for which it should be used, for which it should be redeemed. In that situation, the date of redemption shall be the time of supply. For example, uh, I have sold the vouchers, and I am right now not in a position to tell how a person would redeem that voucher. In that situation, I will pay taxes on the supply of that voucher at that time when that voucher would be redeemed. So it is a very tricky and very difficult task. The law has been enacted in such a way that the person who is dealing into vouchers has to ensure, has to keep record when that voucher would be redeemed. So it is very difficult for that person to ascertain the taxability, the time of supply of that goods. Now moving forward, in case you have any query relating to this, you can write in the chat box. And right now we are moving further. In the residual cases, if we are still not in a position to determine, then in that case the periodical return has to be filed. In that situation, that would be the date. But can you please give me an example where, what would be the situations where residual cases and where there is a difficulty to determine time of supply in above provisions? What would be the cases that a person is unable to determine the time of supply? I don't know why this section 12(5) has been incorporated. Yes, there are few theoretical situations, but in case of practical, if we talk about practical situations, I feel all the answers would be solved by the provision of 12(2) to 12(4). Why 12(5) has been enacted? I am right now not in a position to give you any practical example, but what practical example could be there has also been handled by section 12(6). It says, if interest and late fee has been received, I am making a supply. After making that supply, I raise the invoice of 1 lakh, but I made a condition: if you are not making the payment in 30 days, I will charge 1,000 late fee or 5,000 interest. The valuation rule says that would be included in the value of supply, and that would be taxable similar to the rate which have been taxed of the goods. So 12(6) has also handled that. In that situation, the time of supply shall be the date on which supplier receives such additional value. So let us understand this with the help of example. I made a supply today. This is 20th of January. I made a supply. I raised the invoice by today itself. I received the payment by today itself. But there was some penalty due to any other reason or interest due to some any other reason. However, the payment has been received, but for the sake of convenience, let us assume I am getting some other money in the form of late fee or interest. It has been received on 5th of next month, that is 5th of February. In that situation, the law says on that 5,000 or 6,000 rupees which I have received in the form of interest or late fee on 5th of February, in that situation, the time of supply for that portion of 6,000 shall be the date on which supplier receives, that is 5th of February. Similarly, the rules are enacted with respect to time of supply of services. Again, they have divided it into two parts: forward charge and reverse charge. Separate rules for forward charge and separate rules for reverse charge. Now, in case of supply of services, rules are very simple. First of all, we have to see whether invoice has been issued within the time prescribed or not. Now, for that, we have to see section 31. Section 31 provides us the time within which the invoice should be raised in case of time of supply of services. Now the section 13 says, if you are saying that the invoice has been raised within the time, means you are a compliant person, the invoice has been raised properly, in that situation, time of supply shall be the date of invoice or the date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. Very simple. In that situation, they have made two instances. First one, invoice date. Second one, payment date. Because notification 66 has not deferred the time of supply of services, it has deferred only payment rule with respect to goods. So here, there we have to see earlier of the date of invoice or date of payment. The date which is earlier, if I have not raised the invoice till date, but the payment has been received, then that would be the time of supply of services. By virtue of that, they are trying to convey that in case of services, if you have received advances, you have to pay taxes to the government instantly. You have to pay taxes on the basis of receipt of payment. If suppose the invoice has not been raised within the time prescribed under section 31, we will discuss that provision as well. But now suppose I have not raised the invoices within the time period which is provided under section 31. What would happen in that? In that situation, the law says the date of provision of service or the date of receipt of payment, whichever is earlier. So please tell me what would be the date of provision of services. I request all the participants, what do you understand by the term date of provision of service? I repeat my question again. We are discussing the invoice has not been raised within the time prescribed. Now the law says earlier of provision of service or date of receipt of payment. My question is, what is the meaning of term date of provision of services? Asha ji is saying when service is complete, when services are provided to recipient, date of rendering of services. Absolutely right. The law says in case the person, the supplier of service has provided the service to the recipient, the services are completed, and now I am sure that the service is completely rendered. In that situation, even if the payment is not received by me, I failed to raise the invoice, even in that case, there would be a liability to pay tax. How that liability will be discharged? That would be discharged in the form of return. But the date of determination of time of supply would be governed by the date on which services are rendered by me. Gaurav ji is saying date on which service is complete. Absolutely right. Now, there is a specific exclusion to this rule. The proviso has been inserted. That proviso says, in case the advance is only up to rupees 1,000, then in that case, there would be no liability to pay tax. So it means the advances exceeding rupees 1000 would be considered. So let's us summarize. The rule says in case of services, you have to pay GST on advances as well, but there is a monetary limit of rupees 1000 rupees. Okay, clear? So we have to also understand what would be the time to raise the invoice, because this is the basically the criteria to determine time of supply, because we have to understand first of all whether invoice is raised within time or not. How we will determine that? We will determine that by understanding the time limit prescribed under section 31. So section 31(2) says the time limit is 30 days from the date of supply of services. It says the services are completed on 20th of January. After 20th of January, within 30 days, I am legally bound to raise the invoices. Now, my query to the participants is, what will happen if I would not raise the invoice within time? Is there any provision which would levy penalty on me? Yes, the rules have been provided. The act says if the invoice is not raised within time, I will tell you another method to determine time of supply. But my query is, I failed to raise the invoice within the time period. Can GST officer levy penalty on me? The time limit is 30 days. I'm waiting for your response. What would be the penalty if invoice has not been issued within 30 days? Now, section 31(2) also says the time limit shall be 45 days in case of insurance, banking and financial institutions or telecom operators. So there are two time limits, 30 days and 45 days. Okay. Till now, there is no response. So I believe no one is typing right now. Yes. So the law has the power to levy penalty. The general penalty shall be levied in case a person is not compliant and is not making GST invoice within the time limit. The powers under general penalty has been provided, and in case the proper officer during audit or during any other checking determines that you are not raising invoices within the time, then in that case there is no particular section but a general penalty of 25,000 under each act can be levied by the officer if he believes that you are not following the provisions of section 31. Now the question arises, in case of services, there is a possibility that there are continuous supply of service. So in that situation, how the time limit of 30 days would be calculated? So section 31(6) comes to the rescue, and in that situation, it says, now I will tell you how to determine the time limit to raise invoice in case of continuous supply of services. Continuous supply of services means we are providing services which will be going through a long period of time, and it will take a lot of time to complete that contract or that agreement. So in that situation, the law says if the due dates are ascertainable from the contract, for example, the contract says after completion of 20% of services, invoice would be raised. Then after completion of 50% services, then invoice to be raised. So the law says in those situations where due dates are ascertainable from the contract, then the date of payment shall be treated as the date on which invoice to be raised. In case the contract doesn't provide the due date, in that situation, the due date of payment by the supplier shall be treated as the date on which invoice is to be raised. However, there are certain circumstances, there are certain contracts where the law says, where the agreement says, if this event would happen, then you have to make the payment. So in those situations, if dates are not mentioned in the agreement, but completion of event is mentioned, in that situation, the date on the completion of event on or before date of completion of event, even in that situation, before a person can raise invoice, but on the date of completion of event, the invoice must be raised. It should not be beyond that period. Now, another situation arises in situation where I have entered into agreement to provide the services, but unfortunately, due to some reasons, the services are not completed and we cancel the agreement. In those situations, what would be the time limit? For example, I provided services, almost 50% work has been done, but my client says I'm not satisfied with the working. I want to terminate the contract. So after termination of clause, there must be some payments which should be there. In those situations, the law says, I will tell you in case of termination of contract, how time limit would be determined. So on those situations says when the completion has been not, completion is not there, but the event that contract has been terminated, the time on which it has been terminated, I have to raise invoice at that point of time. Similarly, in case of goods, the time of supply of services in case of reverse charge has been specifically enacted through a separate section, section 13, subsection 3. It says, in those situations, I will tell you how to determine the time of supply. Before discussing this section, I have a query for the participants. The query is, there is a liability to pay GST on reverse charge basis on the legal services of advocate. The financial year 1920 has been ended, but I have not made the payment to the advocate. Now, during the time of audit, I realized that on the legal expenses, there is a liability to pay GST under reverse charge with respect to legal services of advocate. But I was not aware. My auditor has pointed out. Now I am making the payment of GST, whether I am eligible to take ITC of that portion. However, this is not related to time of supply, but the answer relies in this provision only. I repeat my question. During the financial year 1920, I availed the services of advocate. Legal services are availed by me, but I was unaware whether these services would be taxable under reverse charge or not. My auditor pointed out this situation, and now I am making the payment under reverse charge of that portion of services of under reverse charge, and whether now I am eligible to take ITC of that portion or not. I believe the query is clear to everyone. I request please participate in this query. Sanjeev Srivastav is saying yes, ITC is allowed. Okay, so the law is silent on this situation. However, the government has released a press release with respect to financial year 17-18, and in that press release, the government has clarified that in case a tax has been paid under reverse charge in the next financial year, in that situation, it will be treated as the tax paid in that financial year, and the supply is reported in the GSTR 9 of that financial year. By virtue of that, they are saying that if the liability of GST has been discharged by me with respect to services availed in 1920 in the financial year 2021, I have to report that in the GSTR 9 of 2021 only. So by virtue of that, the government is saying you have to report it in the GSTR 9 of 2021, irrespective of the fact that these services are relating to 1920. The press release also says you can take ITC of that as well. But in my humble view, you are not allowed if that ITC is paid after September of next financial year. The law bars us, the reason being, in case of reverse charge, we have to raise a self invoice. If we fail to raise the self invoice within the time, in that situation, we are discharging the liability only on the objections raised by the auditor. We failed to make payment within the time. We failed to raise the invoice within the time. So in that situation, if we are doing something beyond the time limit allowed to us, we are not following the provisions of raising the invoice in case of reverse charge. In that situation, in my humble view, ITC should not be allowed. So we were discussing time of supply with respect to services in case of reverse charge. So in that situation, the law is very simple. It says, in case the time limit shall be 60 days from the date of issue of invoice or any other document by the supplier. However, in case of reverse charge, there would not be a tax invoice. The person must be raising a bill of supply. So by any other document, the government wants to tell us the other document shall be bill of supply, because it can't be tax invoice or the date of payment, whichever is earlier. So it should be the time of supply. I was discussing this example because the law is very clear that in case of services with respect to reverse charge, the time of supply arises 60 days from the date of issue of invoice or any other document by supplier or the date of payment. The date of payment has to be ignored because till now I have not paid to the legal advisor in my example. In that situation, what I have to do is I have the time limit of 60 days only, but I have not done that. In that situation, I personally believe you would not be entitled to claim the ITC because you are not following the principles provided under section 31 for raising the invoice. Now, the law says, but there is an exception in case there is a transaction between associated enterprises and the supplier is located outside India. In that situation, the time of supply shall be earlier of the date of entry in the books of the recipient or date of the payment. This is an exception to this rule which has been provided by the second proviso. Similarly, the residual cases, interest, late fee wale cases or voucher wale cases, these are very much similar to section 12 which we have discussed. Now the question arises, supply of voucher for services, how it would be relevant. The basic example of this situation is I have bought, someone has also asked to please provide the example of vouchers. I provided a voucher to avail services on the urban club. In that situation, if that voucher specifically provides that by this voucher I can avail plumbing services or beauty parlor services, if the supply is identifiable, in that situation this is the rule. But in case I am allowed to avail any service listed on the urban club, in that situation this is the rule. I hope it is clear. Residual cases, we don't spend much time on this because we have to cover place of supply and it is a very wider topic. So this is from the time of supply. But before moving to place of supply, one last section, it is very interesting section, time of supply in case of change of rate. Now, the section 14 specifically says, I will tell you the time of supply in case there is a rate change. Now we have to understand there are three parameters. First one is provision of supply, rendering of services or supply. We have to see the date of supply, the first limb. Second limb is date of issue of invoice. Third limb is date of receipt of payment. Now we have to draw a borderline where two limbs falls under that borderline. That would be the time of supply. For example, let us understand the rule has been changed on 1st of January. The rate of taxes on the footwear industry has been increased from 5 to 12. Now the cutoff date is 1st of January. I have made the supply on 31st of December. The invoice has been raised on 31st of December, but the payment would be received after 31st of December. In that situation, how to determine the time of supply? In that situation, the two limbs are before changing the rate. In that situation, we have to see those points which are falling on the 31st of December. Similarly, if the supply has been made on 31st of December, but invoice is after the change of rate and the payment is after that. In that situation, where two limbs are there, we have to follow that rule. So this is a very simple logic. We have to draw a borderline between three things. Where is the majority? That would be the rule. So this is the section 14 and this is very simple section, but I have a very interesting query relating to section 14. My query to all the participants is, I made the supply of footwear. At that time, the rate was 5%. Now, on the 1st of January, the GST rate has been changed to 12. Now, 30% items are returned by the supplier. In that situation, what should be the rate on the credit note or the return of the footwear? I repeat my question. I made a supply of 1 lakh shoes to a client. I charged 5% GST. Okay. After change of rate on the 10th of January, now those goods are returned to me. The supplier is generating the e-way bill. He is issuing the credit note that I am returning the goods. What would be the rate on that? Whether it would be 5% or 12%. Ashwin Thakur ji saying actual rate charge. Sir, as per which provision? Sumit Nanda ji is also saying 5%. Sanjeev Srivastav ji is also saying 5%. But sir, under which provision? Let's make this case study a very interesting one. For example, the rate of tax is now 12%. I generate the e-way bill by 5% charging rate. I charge 5% rate. During the roadside checking, the GST officer stopped the car, stopped the vehicle. He says, you are transporting footwear. The rate charged on these items is 5% in the e-way bill and in the credit note or document. But now the rates are 12%. What would be your reply? Sumiji, my query is clear. I am waiting for your response. Please, Ashwin ji, Sanjeev ji, Asha ji, Gaurav ji, please reply. Asha ji is saying query is clear but provision yaad nahi. Sumiji is saying, I will explain that these are in return to the original good, hence 5%. But Sumiji, is there any provision which provides you this specific rule that in that situation you have to charge old rate? Let's make it more interesting. You are returning goods after 3 months. Let me remind you one interesting amendment in the GST law which says the credit note and debit note are de-linked to the invoices. Will it help you? Whether that provision will help you, sir? Sumit ji is saying yes. Sumit ji, my query to you is, how will you explain, how will you prove that you are returning goods with respect to the supply which was initiated before rate change? For example, I am supplying goods to Sumit ji. Okay, on every 10th day, after each 10th day, I am providing goods to you at the rate of, for example, by charging 5%. In the month of December, I made supply on 10th, 20th, and 30th. Now you are returning goods to me, but my query is on the month, on the 10th of January, on the 20th of January, on the 30th of January, I have also made supply, but you are returning goods to me in the month of April. The financial year is changed. Now you are returning goods. How will you prove that these goods are relating to that period when rate was 5%? Is it possible to explain? Do you really believe that GST officer will agree to the fact that, okay, goods are returned and these are relating to the financial year 21-22 and these are supplied before rate change? Do you really believe that officer will agree to your explanation? Sanjeev Srivastav ji is saying by showing original e-way bill. Sanjeev ji, whether you will be able to prove that these are the goods which were supplied on that period? Is there any specific labeling on that? Okay, not stretching further, I personally believe if we go by logic, then in that situation, there should be old rate. The reason is, for example, I have made a supply by charging 5% GST. In that case, if a person is returning the goods and I am raising the credit note by labeling 12% GST, in that situation, if I have made liability by discharging liability of 5%, how can I reduce my liability by 12%? This is the practical problem. Similarly, if my client has purchased the goods from me and I gave him the input of 5% because he has paid only 5% tax, how he can reverse 12% credit? If we go logically, the answer is very much clear, but unfortunately this situation has not been tackled, has not been answered in the GST law. Section 14 doesn't provide the time of supply in those situations, and unfortunately we would not be able to prove to the assessing officer in case of roadside checking that these goods are relating to that particular period when rate was 5%. It is very, very difficult task. So in that situation, my advice to my clients is that in that situation, do not raise credit note. In that situation, raise invoice. That would be a win-win situation to both of you. Are you getting my point? How it should be done? Sumit ji is saying yes, he will not agree to me. So Sumit ji, can we do this thing? We can raise invoice instead of showing return. Ashwin ji saying yes, raise sale invoice. Fine, invoice is better option. because right now there is no particular section or particular rule to answer this query. So I personally believe that would be a win-win situation to supplier and recipient as well. In that situation, there would be no fear of roadside checking. So we should do by raising a fresh invoice. We should make a fresh sale. Okay. Yes. Moving further. Yes, Gauravji, 12%. Asha ji is saying, but if we were to show new rate on sale invoice, then credit note can also be issued at new rate. I'm not saying this, that credit note should be on the new rate. But unfortunately, law has no answer to this query, and we would not be able to provide a satisfactory reply to the proper officer who is doing roadside checking. Okay, Asha ji? Yes, very interesting topic. Place of supply under GST. In the beginning of session, everybody has told me that place of supply is important because it will help us to determine what would be the tax liability, whether C and S should be charged and whether IGST should be charged. Okay. But my query to you is, there is a much wider scope of place of supply, because the thing is, there is only requirement to determine what would be the correct liability of taxes, or whether place of supply helps us to know whether there would be tax liability or not. Nobody has answered that we have to check whether the event would be taxable or not. Everybody said C and S would be charged or I would be charged. But my query is, will place of supply can help you determine the taxability of supply? Sanjeev ji is saying yes. Asha ji is saying no. Gaurav ji is saying yes. Okay. Moving forward without wasting much time. The thing is, there were earlier provisions of POPS under service tax. Right. Sumit ji, absolutely right. I am coming to this only. Okay. Earlier, what happens was, if the POPS were outside India, in that situation, there would be no liability of service tax. Are you guys agree with me? When we were in the service tax regime, what happens was, we see POPS rules to determine whether POPS is in India or outside India. If it is outside India, in that situation, we have made a thumb rule that there would be no levy of service tax. Agree? Is it the case in the service tax regime? Okay. Yes. Hanji. So basically, the place of supply rules were incorporated by virtue of service tax provisions only, and we have adopted those provisions in the GST, but with a twist. What is the twist? The twist was, you must be remembering, in the pre-GST regime, in the VAT, excise, service tax regime, the exports were not taxable, but the government has wonderfully, brilliantly enacted the GST law by saying that in GST, the exports would be taxable as well. Agree? First of all, we have to understand, in the GST, exports are taxable. We can't say that there would be no levy of GST on exports. Under GST, the law specifically says the exports are taxable, but the section 54 comes to the rescue. Section 54 says, in case of zero rated supply, we will give you refund if you will be able to prove. But you have to prove that the supply was export and you are covered under zero rated supply, and then you have to claim refund. However, there is an exception to this rule. The government has introduced the concept of LUT and bond. By filing LUT and bond, you can export the goods and services without payment of taxes. But basic principle is, basic thumb rule of GST is, if you have to export goods, you have to pay the taxes. After that, you have to apply for refund and you will get refund. Okay. So in that situation, the place of supply becomes very, very relevant. Apart from determining whether C&S or I would be charged, we have to see whether our supply is falling under the provisions of export or not. If it would be export, there are certain conditions, and one of the condition is the place of supply must be outside India. So we have to see beyond that. But beyond, we have to see that place of supply will not only help to determine whether C&S would be charged or I would be charged, it will help us whether our supply is export or not. Okay, clear? So basically, the ingredients provided under GST are, in case the supply is interstate supply, then IGST. In case the supply is intrastate, then CGST and SGST. So the rule is very simple. We have to check whether supply is interstate or intrastate. On the basis of that, we will determine the taxability. So the place of supply itself doesn't provide, वो आपको सीधा से नहीं बता रहा प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई कि आपको IGST लगाना है या C और S लगाना है. वो आपकी कहाँ हेल्प कर रहा है? इट इज हेल्पिंग यू टू डिटरमाइन वेदर सप्लाई इज इंटरस्टेट और इंट्रास्टेट. ये बताने में आपकी हेल्प करता है. तो इससे इनडायरेक्टली आपको पता लगता है वेदर यू हैव टू चार्ज IGST और CGST एंड SGST. So moving further, let us understand what Section 7 says. Section 7 provides, if I will tell you how a supply would be treated as interstate supply. तो ये पता लगाने के लिए कि हमारी सप्लाई इंटरस्टेट होगी या नहीं होगी, हमें दो चीजें चेक करनी है. We have to see two things. The first thing would be the location of supplier. The second would be place of supply. If both are in different states, so simple rule, it would be interstate supply. अब प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई से हमें कैसे पता लगेगा कि हमारी लोकेशन किस स्टेट में आ रही है और प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई किस स्टेट में आ रहा है? तो वहां से हम क्या चेक करेंगे? वी विल सी वेदर बोथ आर इन द सेम स्टेट और नॉट. सिमिलरली, अगर वो दोनों सेम स्टेट में आएंगे तो उसे हम बोलेंगे इंट्रा स्टेट. अगर वो डिफरेंट में चले जाएंगे तो उसे हम बोलेंगे इंटर स्टेट. इसके अलावा अगर कुछ गुड्स इंपोर्ट किए जाएंगे बाहर से तो उसको क्या बोला जाएगा? इंटर स्टेट सप्लाई. साथ ही साथ द रूल स्पेसिफिकली सेज, अगर प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई इंडिया के बाहर चला गया, आउटसाइड इंडिया ही चला गया, तो उसे भी इंटर स्टेट सप्लाई बोला जाएगा. इसीलिए एक्सपोर्ट्स के ऊपर भी हमें IGST पे करना होता है. ये पावर कहां से आई? चार्जिंग सेक्शन कौन सा हुआ? IGST एक्ट का सेक्शन 7. दिस सेक्शन प्रोवाइड्स अस, even in case the goods are exported, then you have to levy IGST. So section 7 says, in case the place of supply is outside India, in that situation you have to levy IGST. Now, we have earlier discussed there are certain conditions of determining exports. First condition of export was recipient outside India, supplier inside India, place of supply is outside India. Now the question is, in case the recipient is within India, the supplier is in India, but if the place of supply is outside India, then what would happen? Whether it will be treated as export or not. My query to you is, the supplier is in India, the recipient is in India, but the place of supply is outside India. In that situation, whether it will be treated as export or not. Yes, please tell me. Vaneet Bhatia ji is saying yes. Okay. सर बट एक्सपोर्ट्स के लिए तो कंडीशन है ना, रिसिपिएंट भी बाहर होना चाहिए. So the section 7 says, I am not telling you if place of supply is outside India, then it will be treated as export. I will only tell you if the place of supply is outside India, in that situation, it would be treated as interstate supply. That's it. So section 5, section 7 and the charging section, which gives the definition of exports under section 2, are different. The place of supply is India or not will only help you to determine whether it is interstate or not, but it would not be the sole criteria. There are certain other criteria as well to become a transaction as exports. But if the place of supply is outside India, then it is very much clear that the transaction is interstate supply. So this is the basic difference. Are you getting my point, sir? Vineet ji? I was saying, okay, Hanji, Vineet ji saying yes. So Vineet ji, I was saying, section 7 only tells you whether supply is interstate or not. It will not ensure that if place of supply is outside India, then it will become exports. There are certain other conditions of becoming export as well, other criteria as well. Okay. Similarly, in case of intrastate supply, if the place of supply and the location of supply are in the same state, in that case, it will be treated as intrastate supply. So in that aspect, the place of supply helps us to determine whether C and S would be charged or I would be charged. But place of supply is not only helping in this portion only. It has a wider scope. It also helps us to determine exports, to determine to getting refunds, to determine taxability. Okay. So quickly understand what are the provisions relating to place of supply with respect to goods. Section 10. Section 10 says, in case of supply of goods other than import and export, the place of supply shall be determined as follows. Section 10 only provides the place of supply of goods, but it excludes imports and exports. For determining imports and exports, section 11 would be there. Okay, so now we have to understand what section 10 says. The section 10 says, in case the delivery of goods terminates, the supply has been made and the delivery terminates on the factory gate, in that situation, what would be the place of supply? It shall be the location of goods. So to make it simpler, the law has divided the transactions into 5 or 6 parts. First part is to see whether there is a movement or not. If there is a movement of goods, in that situation, the movement has taken place. In that situation, the place of supply shall be the location of goods at the time when goods terminate for the delivery to the recipient. Okay. In case goods are delivered on the direction of third person, It is talking about bill to and ship to model. For example, I have purchased goods from Mr. A, but I instructed Mr. A, please deliver the goods to Mr. B at the premises of Mr. B. For example, I am situated in Haryana, Mr. A is situated in Haryana, but I purchased the goods from Mr. A, but instructed Mr. A to deliver the goods at the premises of Mr. B, who is situated in Delhi. In that situation, the place of supply shall be the principal place of such business, means my principal place of business. So in that situation, C and S would be charged. However, goods are moving in Delhi. In that situation, firstly, Mr. A will raise the invoice by charging C and S, and the another transaction in this particular situation was, I am supplying goods to Mr. B. When I will raise invoice to Mr. B, in that situation, I will charge IGST. So in this transaction, the first invoice, when Mr. A will raise invoice to me, in that situation, he will charge C and S. And when I will raise invoice to Mr. B, then I will raise invoice and charge IGST. Now, what would be the situation if there is no movement of goods? At that situation, if there is no movement of goods, then the place of supply shall be the location of goods at the time of delivery to the recipient. Where the delivery has taken place, that would be treated as place of supply. So can you please give me some example when there is no movement of goods? I'm waiting for your reply. What situation would fall under this clause C? 10 subsection 1 clause C, when there is no movement of goods. Customer come to my shop to purchase goods. सुमित जी, क्या वो डिलीवरी लेने के बाद जाएगा नहीं? गुड्स की मूवमेंट यहाँ पे कहाँ लिखा हुआ है कि मूवमेंट ऑफ गुड्स वुड बी इनिशिएटेड बाय द सप्लायर? I hope my query is clear to the participants. Sumit is saying customer come to my shop to purchase goods. That would fall under where there is no movement of goods. But my query is, यहाँ पर कहाँ लिखा है कि movement of goods सप्लायर करेगा? चलिए हम इसको एग्जांपल समझते हैं. I have a shop. I sell mobile phones. A customer from Delhi visited my shop and he purchased the goods from me. I sold him the mobile phone. In that situation, I am aware that these goods would be consumed in the state of Delhi and I am in the state of Haryana. So whether I would charge C&S or I would charge IGST. My query to everyone is, please respond. In that situation, how taxability would be determined? Gaurav ji is saying IGST. Sanjeev ji is saying C and S. Baneet Bhatia ji is saying C and S. But sir, why you are saying C and S? Ashwin ji is saying as per address in the invoice depends upon. Right. Gaurav ji is absolutely right. Sir, section 10(1)(a) कहता है, where there is a movement of goods, the place of supply shall be the location at which the delivery for the goods terminate. सर हमारे एग्जाम्पल में मेरी शॉप पे आप आए, आपने मोबाइल फोन लिया, आप दिल्ली से थे. आई सोल्ड द मोबाइल फोन टू यू. मुझे पता है मूवमेंट तो होगा, आप यहाँ से उसे लेकर के जाएंगे, लॉ में कहीं नहीं लिखा कि मूवमेंट किसके द्वारा होगा, बट द इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट इज आप मेरी शॉप से बाहर निकले और आपके हाथ से फोन गिर गया, तो क्या आप उस फोन को मुझे वापस दे सकते हैं? नहीं दे सकते, क्योंकि मैंने आपको अपनी शॉप पे फोन दिया, डिलीवरी वहीं टर्मिनेट हो गई, नाउ यू आर द ओनर. So by virtue of section 10(1)(a), the place of supply shall be the location of goods at the time at which the delivery has been terminated. Clear sir? हम इसको एक और एग्जांपल से समझते हैं. आप मेरी शॉप पर आए, you purchase the phone, but you said please deliver it to my address. I am not taking it with my own. Please provide delivery on the FOR basis and goods must be delivered at my home. Your home is situated in Delhi. अब मैंने मेरे वेयर हाउस से गुड्स डिलीवरी के लिए भेजे. अगर वो रास्ते में टूटते हैं तो उसकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी किसकी है सर? मेरी है, यानी कि डिलीवरी अभी पूरी नहीं हुई. अगर मैं वो डिलीवरी आपको आपके घर तक दूंगा, in that situation I will charge IGST, because मैं दिल्ली में जाकर के सामान प्रोवाइड करा रहा हूं. तो हमें समझना है, ये बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है. काफी लोगों को कंफ्यूजन है इस चीज के ऊपर कि अगर आपकी शॉप पे कोई पर्सन आता है, दैट पर्सन परचेज द गुड्स, वो अपना एड्रेस बताता है दूसरी स्टेट का, तो आप IGST नहीं लगाएंगे. आप चेक करेंगे डिलीवरी कहाँ टर्मिनेट हो रही है, क्योंकि मूवमेंट तो होगा. ठीक है ना सर? आपको अगर लग रहा है कि मूवमेंट नहीं होगा, वो चीज वहीं कंज्यूम हो जाएगी, तब 10(1)(c) में आप आएंगे. इसका मैं आपको एग्जांपल देता हूं. कोई फूड शॉप है, रेस्टोरेंट्स, वो यहाँ पर फॉल करेंगे अगर वहां पे वो कुछ सप्लाई करते हैं और आप उसे वहां बैठ करके खाते हैं तो. ठीक है सर? आई होप दिस इज क्लियर नाउ. राइट गौरव जी? एब्सोल्युटली राइट. आर के गुप्ता जी सिंह डिपेंड्स अपॉन एड्रेस ऑफ द कस्टमर. सर आई थिंक अब आपको क्लियर हो गया होगा, एड्रेस से डिटरमाइन नहीं होगा. ओके. इन केस ऑफ इंस्टॉलेशन और असेंबली, in that situation the place where goods are installed or assembled. RK Gupta ji saying clear sir. Okay, thank you sir. When goods are supplied on board or a conveyance, अगर आपको गाड़ी में जाते हुए कुछ मिला है, in that situation such goods are taken on board. जहां से वो चले थे वहां से. रेसिडुअरी बोलता है द प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई. अगर इन किसी सेक्शन से आप नहीं पता लगा पा रहे हैं तो आपको सेक्शन 10(2) बताएगा. अब हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई इन केस ऑफ सर्विसेज. बट at this point of time it is very important to understand the terms location of recipient of service, location of supplier of service. The reason is, in case the section 12 or 13, the law has clearly provided the place of supply shall be either location of recipient or either location of service. So it becomes very important to understand what would be the meaning of term location of recipient and location of services. The law says जहां पर recipient ने रजिस्ट्रेशन लिया है और उसने सप्लाई अपने उसी प्लेस पर ली है जहां पे वो रजिस्टर्ड था, in that situation the location of recipient would be the place. ठीक है जी? very interesting point which says location of fixed establishment. It is a very debatable issue. For example, I am registered in Delhi, but I have a place where I have failed to take registration, but I am consuming the services and that is my fixed establishment. In that situation, we have to see where services are consumed. In case the supply is received not at a place where I am registered, but at a place where my fixed establishment is there, in that situation, the location of such fixed establishment shall be treated as location of recipient of services. Yesterday, Arunji have discussed the meaning of term fixed establishment. Quickly मैं summarize कर देता हूँ. जहां पर there is a permanence, human और technical resources का existence होगा, only in that situation it will be treated as fixed establishment, otherwise नहीं होगा. So it becomes very important for taking registration as well कि हमें कहाँ पर registration लेना है. A very interesting case study came into my mind. For example, I am providing work contract services. I am registered in Haryana, but fortunately I received a contract in Delhi. Whether I am liable to take registration in the state of Delhi. Yesterday you guys have understood the concept of registration and fixed establishment. My quick query to you is please respond quickly. I am a person registered in Haryana. I am providing work contract services. I got a contract in the state of Delhi. Whether I am liable to take registration in Delhi. Ashwin is saying no. Gaurav ji is saying no. But sir, how can I provide services if I am not registered in Delhi? The registration rule says the place from where you are providing services. So if I am providing work contract services, I have to visit Delhi and I have to be there. Then why you are saying no? Viniji is also saying no. Gauravji, I am saying I am already registered in Haryana. Once I have taken registration, the threshold limit of 20 ceases to exist. Anilji is also saying no. But sir, why? What is the rule? Why you are saying no? I want the provision. सर मैं आपका पॉइंट समझ गया. You guys are saying there is no need to take registration. You can charge IGST from here only. I am saying why there is no requirement to take registration. Why Delhi government will not fine me, will not charge me, will not penalize me. Anilji is saying I don't have any fixed place temporarily. Means you are trying to convey that there is no fixed establishment. But sir, to provide work contract services, I must be needing some infrastructure to provide that. So in that situation, my answer to you is, first of all, we have to understand the term fixed establishment. If the contract says, if I need some space, some human power in the state of Delhi, I need some physical existence of manpower to provide that services. The term permanent and temporary are not defined in the GST law. For me, 3 months would be treated as permanent, and for you, 3 months are temporary. But if that would be the case, only by virtue of calculating period we can determine temporary or permanent. Then casual taxable person concept would be vanished. There was no requirement to have the concept of casual taxable person. Let us understand with the help of example. I am participating in the trade fair, Delhi Pragati Madan trade fair. That trade fair, for example, say will run for 3 months. I have taken a place on rent in the trade fair. Okay. In that place, I have no need to provide any human resource. Only display would be there. There would be a no human resource. Only technical services would be displayed at that place. I am situated in Haryana. Now, please tell me whether it would be treated as fixed establishment or not. Yes, and LG, please tell me whether in that situation it will be treated as fixed establishment. Sumit ji is saying yes. Gaurav ji is saying no. Vineet ji is saying no. Sanjeev ji is saying no as there is no human involved. Okay. थोड़ा सा और आसान करते हैं इसको. क्या 3 months, whether 3 months will help me to determine whether there is permanence or not? Asha ji is saying no. Sanjeev ji is saying yes. So there is different opinions of the participants. So what my view in that situation is, there is no thumb rule in the GST law to determine whether it is a fixed establishment or not. The definition of fixed establishment is too much confusing. In the simple language, it doesn't provide a concrete answer what should be treated as fixed establishment. It says if you are able to prove there is a human resource requirement, there is a technical resource requirement, and there is a permanence. But the term permanence is variable to each and every person. Everyone has his own understanding. So in that situation, I personally believe you have to take registration as a casual taxable person. Otherwise, there would be no concept of casual taxable person if we see 3 months as temporary or 3 months as permanent. It depends upon case to case, on the facts to facts, but there are advanced rulings which are in the favor of assessee. The Karnataka Advanced Ruling Authority has specifically says it provides a simple test. It says in the ruling that you have to decide whether you need a fixed establishment or not. If you are able to prove that there is a need to fix establishment, then in that situation you have to take registration, but the option is up to you whether you take as a regular person or casual taxable person. But similarly, Karnataka authority says if I am providing works contract services and that services are provided by sitting in the premises where I am registered in another state and there is no requirement to come at that place, by sitting in the office of one particular state, I am able to provide that services in another state and there is no permanence, there is no need. But a wonderful example was discussed in that ruling. That ruling says what would be the loss to the government in case registration is not taken. Even in case IGST is charged by the person, by the supplier, the revenue will goes to the next state. But I have an objection with that ruling because we are aware that if a person is discharging liability under C and S, that revenue will directly go into the pool of state government. But once it go into the hands of central government by paying IGST, there is a time lag. So yes, definitely the government will always try that persons are registered in his state only. Okay. In case, okay, moving to our topic, we were discussing location of recipient of service. In case the supply is received at several places. For example, I have places in Haryana, in Delhi, in Uttarakhand. The supply is received at several places. In that situation, which is the most directly concerned place, that would be the place of supply. In that situation, the law says appropriation would be done. In that situation, what you have to do is you have to determine how much percentage is consumed by which state. On the basis of that, you will decide the location of receipt. In case you are unable to determine the location, or these places are not into existence, in that situation, the thumb rule, basic rule, the residual rule, the location of the usual place of residence, the address mentioned on that Aadhaar card or voter ID card, that can be used. Okay, clear, sir? Now, section 11, it says what would be the place of supply in case goods are imported or exported. Very simple rule. If goods are imported, then the location of importer. If goods are exported, then location would be outside. Very simple rule. But how we will determine whether it is export or import? We have to see the definition of export or import. It says in case of goods, if Indian frontier is crossed, in that situation it will be treated as export. वेरी सिंपल रूल. कस्टम फ्रंटियर से जब सामान जाएगा बाहर तो आपको एक्सपोर्ट बनाना है. बट फॉर सर्विसेज द रूल्स आर वेरी मच कॉम्प्लिकेटेड. ओके सर. नाउ कमिंग goods, this is the example. If goods are imported, we can skip it. Yes. Now we are discussing the place of supply of services. The goods part has been completed. Now the part is section 12, which says I will tell you the place of supply of services, but in the situation where both supplier and recipient are in India. So the law has been divided into two parts. If the supplier and recipient both are in India, then section 12. If the supplier or either recipient is outside India, one party is outside India, then we have to see section 13. So different rules are made. However, up to some extent they are similar, but we have to analyze what is the importance to determine the place of supply in respect of services. Let's start this with the help of an example. My query to you is, I am residing in India. I went to a tour operator. That person is also registered in Haryana. I bought a tour package. The tour package provides that firstly, I will fly to Mumbai, then I will fly to some another country, for example, Dubai. In that situation, I am in India, I am consuming services, the supplier is in India, the tour operator, but the services would be consumed outside India. Whether this transaction should be taxed at all or not, if yes, then what would be the tax liability? Please respond whether that transaction should be taxable or not. I am in India. The supplier is also in India. In our situation, the supplier and recipient both are in India, but services would be consumed outside India. So being a destination based tax, what your Sanjeev ji is saying yes, taxable. Shikha ji is saying, but my query to you is, since GST is a destination based tax and the services would be consumed in Dubai, why Indian government is charging tax? Everybody is saying taxable, taxable, but sir, why? Being a destination based tax, don't you feel that government is enhancing their jurisdiction? Sumiji is saying benefit of person resident in India. Means government is taking benefit of this situation. So logically, what you believe? It should not be taxable. Sumiji? it should be taxable. Okay. So by analyzing this section 12, I will try to help you why this transaction is taxable despite being a destination based tax, despite the services would be consumed outside India, the government has the power to levy the taxes. In this situation, the section 12, subsection 3 says, in case the place of supply of services which are relating to some immovable property, in that situation, the thumb rule is the place of supply shall be the location where property is situated. तो बिल्कुल सिंपल कर दिया. The words are relating to immovable property means the services which are provided, if they are directly related to immovable property, for example, architect services, interior decorators, any real estate agent, or some other person which is providing services of hotels, restaurants, etc. In that situation, the place of supply shall be the location of immovable property. Now, the rule says, I have booked a hotel in Dubai. I am in India. I booked the hotel in Dubai by using the supplier who is situated in India, but the property is situated in Dubai. In that situation, the place of supply should be the place of immovable property. Shikha is saying place of supply deemed to be a place of recipient. So the government has very beautifully enacted this law. It says if the supplier is in India, the recipient is in India, but the property is outside India, then the place of supply shall be the location of service recipient. Okay. So now, moving further, the law says in case personalized services are consumed, they have given example. Personalized services means where a physical presence are required. In that situation, Rule 12.4 says the place of supply shall be the services where they are actually performed. In case of beauty treatment, health services, in that situation, the POS shall be the place where services are performed. Similarly, in case of training and performance appraisal services, in that situation, if the services are provided to registered person, then location of registered person means recipient registered hai to uska location. In case it is a B2C transaction, recipient is not registered, then the place where services are actually performed. In respect to any event, whether it is a cricket, football, cultural event, in that situation, similar to immovable property, the rule says where the event is actually held or where the park are situated. For example, in case of amusement park, theaters, these would be covering under section 12.6. 12.6 and 12.7 are totally related. It is 7 is relating to organizing any sports event, entertainment event. So in that situation, we have to understand 6 and 7 are related, but 6 says if I am selling the ticket to an event, then you have to read section 12.6. But if you are providing space for organizing that event, for example, let us understand this. I have to organize an event at that place. First of all, I have to book that place. In that situation, the person whose property, whose park, who has the right over the park, he will allow me to organize that event. So this is first type of services. Now I have organized that event and now I am allowing you to come and attend that event, and I'm charging a ticket. So 12.6 talks about the second part and 12.7 talks about the first part. So in that situation, in case of organizing an event or similar transactions, if registered B2B, then place of supply shall be location of such person, means recipient. In case unregistered person, then where the event is actually held. Okay, so we have to understand here 12.6 and 12.7 are totally correlated but provide different answers to different situations. In case of transportation of goods, it is very helpful and very controversial thing because due to GTA services, so it becomes very relevant to determine what kind of tax to be levied. So the rule says, in case of transportation of goods by mail or courier, in that situation, I will tell you the place of supply shall be, if the person is registered one, then the location of that person. If the person is unregistered one, where the goods are handed over for the transportation. So it means if I am consuming the services and this is a B2B transaction, we have to see the location of recipient irrespective of the fact that the goods are delivered to any part of the country. It is going anywhere. Okay, but if it is a B2C transaction, then in that situation, the location where goods are handed over. Okay, clear? In case of passenger transportation, the rule is very simple and these are similar to POPS rules. So location where the person embarks, जहां से उसने वो जर्नी स्टार्ट किया, वो उस व्हीकल के ऊपर, उस मीडियम के ऊपर वो आया. So in that situation, it should be the case if it is a B2C transaction, but these services are taken by a corporate, then the location of that registered person. Okay, clear? In case I am taking services, but a specific rule, the services are relating to aircraft, in that situation, जो उसका first schedule point होगा departure का, that would be the place where journey has started. Before moving further through the POS, a very interesting case study, and my query to all of you is, you must have seen that whenever a person applies for advance ruling with respect to place of supply, determination of place of supply, the AAR reject that ruling. Are you aware about this provision? Whenever a person applies for advance ruling with respect to determination of place of supply, in that situation, the AR says this is not in our jurisdiction. Please let me know whether you are aware about this. Asha ji is saying yes. So basically what happens was, Section 97 provides the circumstances under which a person can apply for advance ruling. And in that section, the law doesn't specifically says that you can ask for advance ruling. And there are almost 95% advance rulings rejected by giving a sole ground that AAR has no jurisdiction to give ruling on determination of place of supply. But there are several rulings, several ARs which provided the determination of place of supply. In that situation, but Kerala High Court observed. Kerala High Court said, in the section 97, you have the power to determine the taxability of transaction. By determining the taxability, it is very important to understand what would be the place of supply. So how you can say that you have no jurisdiction? You have to answer, you have to provide decision relating to determination of supply. However, this ruling has not been supported by AR till date, and even today also, we are seeing that almost all the applications of advanced ruling with respect to place of supply are rejected by merely stating that you are not eligible because it is beyond the scope of AAR. With respect to banking and financial services, the rule is very simple. The location of recipient, the address which is available on the record. Similarly, the same provision is in insurance services. But in case of advertisement services by the government, the law says you have to proportionately calculate which state will get benefit. For example, central government hired an agency. The advertisement would be for n number of states. In that situation, the law says you have to determine how that benefit shall be attributed. If it is attributed to only one state, then only that state shall be the place of supply. If it is not that state and there are multiple states, then the proportionate mechanism should be there. Okay. The residual section. Section 12, the residual section says if you are not falling in all of the above category of services, then in that situation, the recipient is registered one, then the location of service recipient. If it is made to unregistered person, then the location of recipient where address is available. If the location of recipient is not available, then the location of supplier. So in that situation, the law says even if the service provider and recipient are in India, it is not relevant that services are provided outside India or inside India. That shall be taxable whenever there is a shortcoming. They provided a proviso, as we have seen in case of immovable property as well. Whenever they feel that the supplier and recipients are in India, the government try to tax. They try and take the benefit of this provision, as rightly mentioned by one of our participants, that if the recipient is in India and the supplier is in India, it doesn't matter where services are consumed. Despite the fact that it is a destination based tax, the government tried to earn revenue from these transactions by consuming that. In that situation, we will believe the services are consumed by Indians. Okay. Sumit ji?
Yes,
Sir,
जी Vishal ji.
can we continue, because I will need 10 more minutes to complete section 13 as well. One section is remaining.
Okay.
If you please
okay,
allow
okay.
me.
Yes, Vishal ji, you can conclude so that recording can be placed properly. It will be
Sir,
better.
Sumit,
Vishal ji, it will be better. You can conclude.
okay, okay.
Sure. Thank you.
Similar to section 12, the section 13 is very much relevant, because in this situation, the law says if a person, the supplier is in India, but the recipient is outside India, then the place of supply shall be determined. Basically, the rules are very much clear. The government has tried, even in case if the recipient is outside India and the supplier is in India, the government tried to collect taxes, because they believe that if the supplier is in India, how we can forego the revenue. They always tried to make a rule in such a way that the place of supply will become in India and they get the right to collect the taxes. The best example is in case of intermediary. In case of intermediary, what happens is the intermediary is a person who is working as an agent. In that situation, that services are consumed outside India. The intermediary, the agent, is residing in India. The government says even if services are consumed outside India, even in that case, we will charge taxes and IGST has to be levied. Now you have to prove exports. You will not be able to prove because the condition for export is the POS must be outside India. But in that situation, the rule says the POS shall be in India. So let's quickly analyze section 13. In case the services are performed on goods, in that situation, the rule says the location where services are actually performed. In case there is a requirement to provide services through electronic means, in that situation, the location where goods are actually situated. In other cases, the location of receipt. In case of immovable property, the rule is very much simple, where the property is actually situated. Place where the actual event is happened shall be the place of supply. In case of services with respect to exhibitions, sports events, in those situations, the rule is very much simple. The place of supply shall be the place where the event is actually held. It doesn't create any difference whether the recipient is in India or not. The rules of 12 and 13 are same in these two situations. In case where in case the services are provided at more than one location, and even if a single location is in the taxable territory, then the location shall be taxable territory. Means whenever the government chance to tax, a 1% possibility is there, the government try to capture that opportunity and levy the taxes. The section 13.6 says even if 99% of services are provided outside India, but 1% services are in India, even in that case, the whole transaction shall be taxable. However, they have option to create proportionate valuation, but no, they says it should be like that. For transportation of goods and for passenger transportation, the rules are very much same. This was the section 13. The major difference was relating to intermediary services, which was absent in section 12, but it was provided in section 13. I have already covered that. So Sumit, I think I have covered place of supply as well. Though due to shortage of time, I have to quickly wind up section 13. I'm really sorry for that. In case there is any query, please.
Vishalji, you have wonderfully covered. I think any other query participant can post right now so that we can quickly wind up the session. Ashwin Thakkarji is asking something. Vishalji, can you
The
see
place
this
of
query?
supply in case of an astrologer provided his services to foreign client on phone or online. Sir, I think it will fall under the residuary clause. Ashwinji, this service is not specifically covered and it is not personal service. You can provide without having any presence of that person. So I believe it will fall under the residuary clause and it would be the location of recipient in that situation.
I think there is no other such query. I request Ashaji is there. Asha Sharma from our team member. Ashaji, are you there?
Yeah, Sumit
You can conclude by giving vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Vishal for a very wonderful deliberation on place of supply and time of supply. बहुत ही अच्छे से आपने क्लियर किया and queries आपने साथ के साथ ली. And thank you all the participants for joining us and making this session interactive. Thank you. Vishal are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Okay. You were not visible earlier. So thank you so much, Vishal and thank you all the participants. हमारा कासा का टेलीग्राम चैनल है. You can join our telegram channel for all the PPTs and all the updates regarding our various programs which we are doing or planning to do. So you will get all the information. And thank you, Sumit ji.
Thank you. Thank you. And in the meantime, I will post presentations to all the participants tomorrow. along with the video. Thank you Vishal ji once again.
So thank
Thank you to each participant. Thank you Asha.
Thank you.